Everything hardware-wise is connected and we know the engine turns over, we're in a position where we can connect to your ECU with your laptop computer. Once you've downloaded the GEN Tuner Lite software from the website using the instructions which we will provide, you need to then open your software up, and we're going to turn the ignition on. So now the car is powered up, and we go up to ECU and then we go to connect. As you can see now, we're scrolling across and it is downloading all 6,143 bytes of information, thus giving you a stored copy of the calibration. Once this is operating, you can then see throttle position, engine RPM and all the other parameters which the ECU is able to feed back to you. Okay, now we've connected into the ECU and we've got everything operational in that respect, we need to set up the throttle position sensor which we've previously fitted. Now this is still loose, so you can rotate it into its start position. So what we need to do is go to the throttle position tab in the software, click on that, and you can see the value here, TPS raw, that is showing us the base value of the throttle position sensor. And you can see here that the ECU thinks we've got 3.7% throttle, which is obviously incorrect. So what we need to do initially is rotate the throttle position sensor around till we get a raw value of 10. Once that's done, we can lock that off. And what we're going to do now is turn the ignition off and on and let the ECU reset itself. The ECU with this application has a feature where it auto zeroes the throttle position sensor, and obviously now the throttle has gone to 0. Now in the box below it says TPS minimum, that is set to 15. That number needs to be slightly above what your minimum TPS raw value is, and then it counts down so it'll automatically zero each time you turn the ignition back on. So now what we need to do is set the maximum. So on using the lever on your throttle bodies here, open the throttle bodies all the way and you'll see the TPS raw value is 209 when fully open, and we go into the box, it says TPS max, enter 209, press enter, and that is your maximum value. So now if we go full throttle we've got 100 and then 0%. Probably need to adjust the throttle position sensor again ever so slightly. So we've got 10, there we go. And then we've got 100 and 0%. Now, once everything's locked off, that is your TPS setup. I'm going to move on to balancing the throttle bodies. Now, the tools you need for that are a 7mm spanner for the lock nut, a 3mm Allen key for the throttle body idle stop, and then a 2mm Allen key for the balance adjuster, and obviously the synchrometer, which we covered earlier. Now we'll show you how to use this. First, get to your throttle bodies. You may find that the throttle stop here isn't in fact slightly open, and you do need to open it slightly. Obviously there will be no air entering the engine. If that is the case, just very slightly open it and you'll see it move off its base stop, and only do it a fraction of a millimetre, just there's a small amount of air going in. If it's fully closed, like I say, it won't start. If you go too much, it's not a problem because we can always adjust the values, and we'll set that up a little bit later on. Okay, as you can see here, the engine does sound a little bit rough at idle, so we're going to look at the balance. Well, on the primary pair, we've got about 5.5, and on the secondaries, we've got about 3.5. So obviously this side needs to increase airflow to match the left side. So what we'll do, using our 2mm Allen key, wind that open a little bit. You can hear the tone change. We're going to go 5.5. Now this has gone up to about 6. So we might increase this a little bit further. Now the balance is correct between the pairs. We'll check all 4, 6, 6, 6. And 6. Okay, now we'll shut the engine down. As you can see, the engine is now sounding a lot smoother. What we need to do now is lock off the balance between the pairs. So just using your 7mm and your 2mm, pop the Allen key in to make sure you don't move the adjuster, and carefully nip up the adjuster to stop it moving over time. Now it is important to note that this is a service procedure. You will need to adjust the balance in the bodies periodically. I would suggest every sort of 2,000 or 3,000 miles to check them. Now we're just going to check it again to make sure we haven't made any mistakes. Put the balancer back in. Got just under 6. Just under 6, so we're okay on this occasion. Next thing to check is then in fact the TPS is where we need it to be. Obviously, having made some adjustments initially, we may have to make them again. So we now pop the ignition back on, and you can see that the TPS raw value has in fact gone down to 5, which is not where we left it. And maximum is 214, so they both have changed a little. So obviously now the balance is correct, we need to make that adjustment. Now undo the TPS sensor. We're going to aim for 10 again, the TPS raw. There we go. And then we're going to lock that off. One or two either way isn't critical. And then we're going to look at what our maximum value is again. We've got 219. Okay, so set TPS max in the settings box, 219, hit enter. Ignition off and on again. Wait for it to auto 0. Okay, we've gone back to 0. Recheck the values again. In fact, got 220 on full throttle, so we'll just adjust that one. There we go, we've got 100%, and that is now set correctly for running. The next thing to double check is using the live data screen. We'll have an idle value here called idle set, and then idle speed error underneath, which is more critical on this particular occasion. So with the engine running, we are looking for a value of about minus 50 RPM. As we can see here, it's approximately between 40 and 70, which is where I'd expect it to be based on the value of 6 kilograms per minute. So I'm happy to leave that as it is now. That value simply means that it is 50 RPM away from its target, which is where we need it to be, because that will allow us a little bit of extra throttle for cold starts and to help stop the engine stalling. The next stage is to install the throttle cable. The first part of this is to remove the original drive-by-wire pedal mechanism. Now, as you can see, there are 3 bolts holding it on, one of which has the socket on it currently, and there is a multi-plug at the top which you'll need to undo. Once these are removed, we can then show you how to install the new cable pedal setup. Next we need to talk about the throttle cable assembly. This is how the cable will come. This is the end which goes on to the throttle body themselves, and this end goes into the car and for the pedal. Now, what you'll need to do initially is remove a rubber grommet from the bulkhead and replace it with a shouldered rubber sleeve, and the shoulder goes on the outside of the bulkhead, in other words engine side. Then this goes through that, and this then allows the cable to sit neatly. It's difficult to get through, and then the outer sleeve sits in that, and that pushes home, and then that allows your cable to not move through the bulkhead. Pull back the inner wheel arch to gain access to the bulkhead. You can see here the Allen key sticking through indicates where the hole is that you need to put the shouldered grommet and then the throttle cable guide. Now is put the outer throttle cable down behind the heat shield just underneath the brake reservoir here. and then I'll need to go through the inner arch to find the cable. Here now that we've got the outer throttle body cable inside the grommet and the cable holder. Okay, now before we put the cable, inner cable in, we need to put the cable guide on. Now as you can see, this is offset, this side being shorter. This needs to go to the left and line up with the throttle linkage itself. It needs to be lightly nipped up. Okay, the next part is to put the end of the cable here into the throttle linkage itself. So slide this in through the side and then up there. What we can do now is get all the way to the other end of the cable and feed that up through the adjuster, which we've just bolted on very carefully so as not to damage the end. Pull that through. Guiding it round the linkage itself, and now that operates correctly. What we can now do is slide the inner cable inside the outer cable, again being careful not to fray the end, all the way down. You'll feel it get a little bit stuck as it goes through the bulkhead, but very carefully work that around and it will go through. Having got the inner cable through, we now put a cable tie around here onto the engine hoist and install the two P-clips on here and here, securing the cable, leaving a little bit of free play here should you need to reroute in any direction. Here is the pedal assembly. We've got quite a nice little feature added into here. The 3 points here allow the pedal to pivot, so allowing you to position the pedal where you are most comfortable. Once it's in the correct place, you can nip it up on here. The pedal is in place, we can just test it to make sure everything operates. We'll start the car. We have the air filter assembly, and we can see how the assembly goes together, and it's very important to use the spacer rings to keep the air filter off the end of the trumpet. So we'll install these here, and then the trumpet needs to go inside the air sock first before we can install it on the engine. You can see here the orientation of how it all goes together. At this point it's also important to realise that the air filter is actually a wedge shape, and it's thinner at the top than it is the bottom.